right, welcome. We are glad you're here. What a great day to be inside and watching Veggie happenings. We're really excited that you're here. And it's great that it's raining. And you may have all of these wonderful seed catalogs. This is the perfect day for you to look through and decide what you may want to plant for next year. So we have two fabulous speakers that are going to talk to you about, first of all, going through and figuring out what you did in your garden this year and what worked and what didn't. And that's Sue Lovelace. And we have Electra DePeister, who is going to talk to us about preparing for next year and sourcing your seeds, something that you might not think about, but it's really important. And then we're going to have Shannon McMath, who's a master food preserver, and she's going to talk to us about using up some of that fruit that you maybe have frozen in your freezer or you still have on your trees, and making fruit shrubs for the holidays. So my name is Toby Brown. I'm your guide today on Veggie Happenings, and I am a master food preserver and a master gardener. So right now I'm acting as a master gardener. Okay. So your audio and video will be off for this webinar, just like always. Please put your questions in the Q&A box rather than in the chat. And it is being recorded. So in a couple of days, you'll be able to access this and anything that you've missed on our website. So one thing I just want to let you know, this is 2021 and it is November. We do our best to give you up-to-date science-based information. So please always check when you're looking at things on the internet, not just for your source of information, but also for the date that it was published, because things change and you want to make sure you have the most current information. So sadly, it's raining, but we are still in a drought. We do in California, I always consider that we're always in a drought. We need to always save water and, not waste it for sure. So if you haven't already been to our Master Gardener website and looked up how to save water, do that. I mean, it's a great resource. So this is our Master Gardener webpage. Right there where the pink arrow is Food Gardening with Less Water, some really excellent resources. So I have two QR codes for you this time. The first one is seasonal information on the gardening aspect, the first two speakers, and that is this QR code. So you may want to capture that. I have a second one for master food preservers, and that will be coming up. So we do sustainable food gardening. And while I'm talking about this, I'd like you to think about what you would like to hear from us next year. We do take December off, so we won't be coming to you during December. And we've been planning what we're going to showcase for you next year. But if you have some good ideas for us on sustainable gardening practices, ideas that you want to know more about, if you could just put those ideas in the Q&A, that would be awesome. So this time of year, you want to plant the right plant in the right place at the right time. And if you listen to read Sundays with Sue this week, you'll know that if you're trying to build up your pollinator habitat, now might be the right time to do that. Pretty much all of your winter veggies should be in by now. We're nurturing and protecting our soil by adding a layer of compost and some mulch on top of that, and maybe planting a cover crop like fava beans. We always mulch, and that saves water, and it also prevents weeds from growing. We don't use synthetic fertilizers, herbicides, or pesticides, and we practice minimal soil disturbance, and that includes not walking on your ground. Please don't walk on your garden beds. Any place where you would like things to grow, we don't want to walk on, especially when it's nice and moist and wet right now, because it really squishes down that mycorrhizal network that is working so hard to make your soil nice and strong. We use flowers that benefit plants and beneficial insects. Notice right now, what's blooming in your garden. Use compost and organic amendments. And that's it. So first off, you are so lucky. Our first speaker is Sue Lovelace. And Sue Lovelace is a master at many things. And one of the things that she does that she's most famous for is Sundays with Sue on Facebook. That is also on our Master Gardener webpage. And she gives fabulous garden information to you every single week. So I just thought there. Okay, so Sue is going to go ahead and take us away on planning next year's food garden.
Okay, well, welcome to our presentation today. And Toby, thanks for mentioning Sundays with Sue, as it's been a great opportunity to connect and share with other gardeners. And that's what we hope to do today. So let's get started. Okay, so why plan for next year's garden now? Well, it gives us the opportunity to assess our garden while it's still fresh in our minds. Also, you may have something still growing in your garden. This butternut squash here has been giving us soups and pastas all fall long, and it's one we'll definitely repeat. Planning now allows time to order and start seeds, as Electra will talk about. And then it helps us identify areas for rotation and succession. So let's talk a little bit about assessing our garden. So what worked and didn't work? Did your plants produce well? If not, did you overcrowd your plants? Well, I mention this because I am guilty of that this year. I tried to squeeze those 2 extra tomatoes into our large bed, and it was not a good thing. So how about irrigation? Did you have blossom end rot? That's usually a direct result of inconsistent irrigation. How about sun scald? Sunburn on your vegetables, namely tomatoes and peppers in the late afternoon sun. That would be something you would want to plan for shade or even relocate if it's been a problem. Are you happy with your varieties? Do you want to try new varieties? And do you think other ones might do better in your garden or in your climate? So pollinator support, you'll hear this again, really important. Did you have it all year long? Bringing the pollinators in early so that they're there during the crucial months of fruit bloom and summer vegetable bloom is really important to our development of our food. It's also good in other areas, but I'll talk about that later. Note taking. Taking notes as your garden is growing is really a good thing. Sometimes hard to do. I know I get in the house and forget to do it. So I put a chalkboard out in the garage and I try to write little notes on the chalkboard. But again, it really is helpful in planning. Okay, so I'd like to show you a picture of the ill-fated large bed. On the left, it looks pretty good in early June. The early maturing tomatoes did fine, gave us a good crop. So did a few peppers and tomatillos. But later on, look at the right-hand picture in August. And I'll tell you, not a lot of sun and circulation got in there. We have self-seeding flowers that I know are going to be in there every year. And really, it was a lesson learned. that I knew the space, and I planted anyway, and hopefully I'll know better next year. So I'd like to talk a little bit about rotation and succession. Okay, so we have a year-round, we call it a victory garden because we eat from it year-round. It's pretty small area, it's 450 square feet. And so there are certain methods we use to make rotation and succession planting happen. One of them are square foot grids. And on our large bed, I'll show you a layout later, we have square foot grids that basically gives every square inch of the bed space. And right now there's fava beans in the bed, so I'm not utilizing it like I normally would in the spring or the fall when I plant smaller plants and then start seeds and then starts and have a complete succession. So anyway, Veggie happenings in the spring had a great thing on square foot planting, Ellie. So if you look at our YouTube, you can find it, and it'll give you more information. Vertical planting, huge in small gardens, but also important in any garden, planting as many plants as you can vertically to take advantage of the sun and the air is a benefit all the way around. And seasonal perennials, we use those a lot in our beds. Scarlet runner bean is one we have growing in the summer from our large bed to an adjoining bed. It provides flowers for the pollinators and then later beans, dry beans for us. Artichokes we grow, and they give us a spring crop, and as they die back in early summer, I can vertically plant next to them. So another seasonal perennial is oregano, which serves as like a little hedgerow for the veggie beds. It brings bees directly to the beds along with interplanted flowers. Okay, so cover crop, as I said, fava beans are growing in the bed right now. Some I will cut at soil level when they flower, and put in the compost to get the benefit of the nitrogen. The nitrogen stops producing, well, it doesn't stop producing, but the plant takes it up once it starts to flower. And so we'll let some of those go to full bean because my husband likes it, but then, like I said, we'll cut some at soil level to get that cover crop benefit. Additional planting beds, huge in a small garden to rotate into these Chinese long beans that you see in the picture. I had them growing in a pot. If you look at the picture to the right, you'll see them vining up a corner of the pergola. Since the large bed was deprived of light, these Chinese long beans were a great substitute to the pole beans I had in the large bed. The corn there, we planted in a horse trough. Oh, and it was so great. We'll move it to the other horse trough. You'll see we have two together, and grow it again next year. We utilize everything, pots, wine barrels, and troughs. I'll show you a better layout as we go along. blooms for pollinators. There it is again. But in this picture to the right, you'll see that there is a terraced area above our veggie beds. And in that area are native plants that flower early and flower during the summer, and non-natives that flower. We grow a lot of fruit up there, and you know, we really depend on it to be our invitation to pollinators. This monarch butterfly you see there on the bottom came to visit the garden this year, and we were glad to be able to furnish this butterfly with nectar plants, and we had some milkweed, and she laid a few eggs on the milkweed before moving on her journey. Afternoon shade, we planted a fig tree, believe it or not. It's a dwarf in a corner of our raised bed to provide afternoon shade to the tomatoes and peppers. And it's been pretty effective, and it gave us a lot of figs as well. Okay, so let's look at the layout. There's the large bed A with the square foot grids. The little grids on the left of the path, it's a 12 by 8-foot bed. So we put a little path down one side to access our vegetables. Those grids to the left of the path are about 2 feet, and I put things like peppers and broccoli in this cool season, you know, little larger vegetables in there. That cage will house peas in the spring, and then transition into cucumbers in the warm season. The trellis will be the location for our squash. And the pea in that bed is the scarlet runner bean that runs over to the adjoining bed. And in that adjoining bed, it's a horseshoe bed with a path down the middle. They're about 3 feet wide, and the whole bed is about 10 feet long. And so the 3 perennials on the south end of that bed are artichokes that I said will die back, and I'll plant vertically next to them. The troughs, and number 2, I planted that corn you saw, and we'll move it to trough 1, and we'll put in some peppers in trough 2. In the wine barrel there's 2 wine barrels, wine barrel 1, wine barrel 2. There's radishes in wine barrel 1 under a finishing pollinator plant, and in that'll become peppers next season. Probably do some greens, some lettuce before I transition into the warm season peppers. In wine barrel 2, there is mustard mix, and again, that'll transition. This sounds very complicated, but I will tell you that having extra beds, whether they're pots or they're troughs or they're wine barrels, really relieves pressure of feeling like you have to take out vegetables that you want to grow a little longer. You can start your fall when your summer's finishing, like it was in our case in bed A and bed B. We could use our containers. One more thing I wanted to say, if you look at the trough over on the patio, it has wheels, and that is like a Peter Rabbit garden with Chinese cabbage and kale and lettuce and beets and carrots, and that'll stay all spring. And then probably we'll put some sun gold tomatoes in there. Yeah, I hope this didn't sound too chaotic, because I don't want it to. It's really flows pretty well. Okay, so here is the start of a plan, for our next season in bed A. You'll see there's garlic there that's growing right now. And so are the fava beans. And peas we'll put in the spring, see it down in the corner. Otherwise, we're going to plant 3 tomatoes, not 5. And we'll do 3 peppers and a couple eggplant and those pole beans that actually are great for this bed because it shades our chicken coop, which is on the other side. We depend on them to do that. So anyway, that's how I've kind of started on my planning. Okay, so I have one more slide and
Sue, you are at 14 minutes.
Okay, great. And I'm almost done. Thank you. I just wanted to show you these great radishes we had and the lettuce that is actually in the trough that the corn was in, and the mustards, and of course the butternut squash soup. So thank you, everyone. Have a happy holiday and enjoy the rest of this presentation. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sue. And don't be overwhelmed. If you're a master gardener, I'm sure you already know Sue and knows that she's a big planner. So we all having a plan ahead of time really does help. So you're not surprised you don't have too many tomatoes. All of that definitely helps. So now you have a good idea of what worked in your garden and what did not work, what you'd like to add. Maybe you went over to your friend's garden and thought, ooh, look at those scarlet runner beans. Or maybe you saw something on Sundays with Sue and thought, I got to do that. So now's the time to plan for that because, seeds are available. There's some other things to think about this. And you're really, really, really lucky in order to hear Electra DePeister. She changed the way I look at seeds. I went through usually and saved every seed, even though you can't really save every seed and get what you're wanting. Or I'd go down to the store and I just pick some off the rack, which sometimes is great. But she's giving you lots of extra options and things to look at. Electra is a longtime seed saver extraordinaire. That is her lane. And she works at the Community Seed Exchange, volunteers her time in Sebastopol. If you haven't been there, fabulous. Pre-pandemic, she was often a speaker. And so she delves into some different things when she speaks with Seed Savers Exchange. So, Electra, I'm passing it off to you.
Okay, Toby, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I'm going to be talking about things to consider when sourcing your seeds for next year's garden. Next slide, please, Toby. So first things first, and this goes back to and echoes what Sue said. Consider your space. How much do you have? Can you expand your space? Did you overcrowd last year? I think we're all tempted to do that. One of the biggest questions that I always have now is, do I have enough water? Will I have enough water? And that's, of course, we don't know that. The other major thing to consider is whether, we have to expect weather challenges, and the weather challenges include heat, drought, flooding, inconsistent and extreme weather, and then additionally, possible new insect and disease pressures. Consider what did well in the past, and did you save seed? If you saved your seed, replant that seed instead of buying new seed. And that helps the seed further adapt to your garden. Next slide, please. Planning your garden.
Is that the slide you're expecting?
No, I think I eliminated that slide, but that's all right.
Okay. Okay.
So planning, this goes again to what Sue said. Choose the crops that you like to eat or plant, donate, or share. Plant as many varieties of as many crops as you can. And then plant for diversity. That helps everyone. All right, so where to source your seeds. The first three categories here, friends and family, farmers markets, seed swaps, libraries, and exchanges, are the most local and your best options for finding seeds that were grown in a similar climate to your own. Amongst them, you also might find a seed mentor who will share seeds, and those seeds might already be very well adapted to our area. If you plan to fill out your collection with some seeds from seed companies, read the About page on their website or in their catalogs. This will give you a lot of information about the company's philosophy and where it grows or sources its seed. Many companies do not reveal this. Next slide, please. So where is seed grown? It's grown all over the world. There are huge conglomerates that do this. Many seed companies that we run into at the retail level will buy seed from the large producers and then repackage it as their own. Seed grown in a similar climate to yours will be better adapted to your conditions. You're going to hear me say that a lot. So let's see, even if you initially buy seed that was grown in a different climate under different conditions, it can adapt to your garden. Next slide, please. So if you want to source seeds that are grown in a similar climate to yours and you're not using your own seeds, consider companies that might be close by. So Open Circle, Living Seed Company, Quail Seeds, and the Community Seed Exchange are all local, or they're all in our bioregion. Each company has a slightly different model. Some companies grow all their own seed, although this is rare. Some companies breed and sell their varieties that do well on their farms. And some companies just trial other people's seeds and then decide what to offer as their own. The Community Seed Exchange, as Toby told you, is a place where I volunteer in Sebastopol. We grow seeds for the community. It's an all volunteer group. And I encourage you to check it out. The three companies below the blue line have disappeared off the radar. I'm hoping that they will resurface. I think much of their disappearance had something to do with COVID. Next slide, please. So other companies to consider, as I mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention this, a lot of seed is grown on the West Coast of the United States. And that is primarily because we have long, dry summers as the seed is maturing. So you'll notice that this list of seed companies is all on the West Coast. And these companies, many of them, came to life as a response to the huge seed company takeover that started in the 1980s and continues today. They represent the beginnings of a more decentralized regional seed system. And these are small companies that primarily rely on networks of small seed producers on family farms in their region. Again, if you read their About Us pages, you'll get a feel for what they focus on. And you'll see the percentages next to each company's name that represent how much they say they grow themselves or by their network. And that here's an example from Redwood Seeds about what they do. They say, we continue to grow the majority of our seeds here on the farm, around 85%. A handful of varieties are sourced from other organic seed producers. So, and one of the other trends that you'll see with some of these smaller companies is they're very much more transparent than some of the old standby seed companies. Next slide, please. So venturing further afield, here is a big list of seed companies from all over the country in different regions. And they're worth looking at it as a way to introduce more genetic diversity and resiliency into your garden. Genetic diversity may be key in successfully responding to climate inconsistencies. And in addition, it will also improve your support for insects and pollinators. So remember that some of the seed offered by these companies might be produced on the West Coast, but they also have seeds and varieties that were produced elsewhere. So my recommendation is to try to have as broad a mix of seeds as you can and that you can fit into your garden, so you'll have a broad genetic base. Next slide, please. Oh boy. Okay, so actually this slide was an old slide. No, go back. It's okay. There. I was going to talk about something different, but I'm going to go through this. So here's a catalog description. This is Green Magic broccoli. You'll notice right below the name, there's a Latin name included. That is really helpful for if you're a seed saver, because you want to know what the genus and species are so that you can either allow something to cross or prevent it from crossing. Below that, you'll see there are 90 days in parentheses. That is what we call the days to maturity, and that is a gauge to let you know when you can possibly expect your first harvest. It's a great planning tool, but these numbers are not cast in concrete. Some seed companies don't publish a days to maturity figure because they feel there are way too many inconsistencies in how things grow and how long it takes things to get to maturity. So another thing you want to consider when you're choosing your seeds is whether or not they're organic or they're grown conventionally, or even if they're grown biodynamically. You should try to match the seeds you select with how you grow in your garden. Also, when you're looking at a variety in a catalog, look for keywords that help you understand more about that variety, such as flavor. Is it widely adapted? How does it perform in the garden? And then also, what is its disease resistance? All of those things will go into whether or not your crop is going to be successful with your conditions. Now, as it turns out, this is a slide or a screenshot from the Fedco catalog. And I wanted just to tell you what that little 5 is at the bottom of the description. Fedco will give you a ranking or a 1 through 6 ranking based on how large a seed company it is that grew that particular seed. So if it's a 1, it's a very small family farm. And then as you go down the list to 5, that is a multinational company. So it's up to you to decide who you want to support. All right, so next slide, please. Okay, so choose your crops that you want to grow. This is a little bit of a repeat from one of the slides earlier. Then you choose your varieties from there. And again, look for, this is a repeat. Look for key terms like widely adapted and drought tolerant. Buy more than one variety of a crop. And so if one fails, the other might perform better.
Electra, you're at 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I also would encourage you to stagger your plantings. If one planting doesn't do well, follow-up planting might be successful and avoid a big weather event. And again, use days to maturity. And I apologize, these, I think I had a different slide deck. All right, well, all right, let me just add something that was on the new slide deck. So one of the things that's happening at the retail level, which has never happened before, or it's just starting to happen, is that you'll start to see seeds that are patented. And that includes utility patents and plant variety protection designations. A utility patent, both of those restrict your seeds and what you can do with them. On the opposite end of that spectrum is something now called the Open Source Seed Initiative. Any seed with this designation is to remain in the public commons and cannot be patented. So look for that designation. I believe there are about 500 varieties now that have been pledged to the Open Source Seed Initiative. Next slide, please. Okay, so how long do seeds stay viable? I get this question quite a bit. How long do your seeds last? Well, seeds are alive, they breathe, they metabolize. The better that they are stored in cool, dark, and dry conditions, the longer they will live, providing these conditions slows down the seed's metabolism. So also, just as a note, a side note, look at the packed for date. If you see packed for 2021, it does not mean that your seed was grown that year. Some seed companies will buy a 3-year supply of a seed and then pack it in 2021, but your seed might already be 3 years old. Well, how do you know that that seed's going to be viable? The companies are required to do germination testing, and they need to meet federal requirements, and it's generally around 75 to 80%. So just be aware that packed for does not mean grown that year. Next slide, please. So in closing, look for seeds that are grown in a similar climate or adapt them to yours. Plant as much diversity in the garden as you can, and save your seeds from varieties that do well. And then share your successes. So I think that's all I have to say right now. I'm happy to answer questions at the end.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Electra. And now we have Master Food Preserver, Shannon McMath, and she is going to tell us how to do fruit shrubs. But first of all, I just wanted to let you know that Master Food Preservers are under the UCA&R umbrella. And what we're trying to do is teach the home food preservers to do things safely and not waste food. So super, super important. We do have a Master Food Preserver page. There's a Sonoma County page, and there is a page for the statewide Master Food Preservers. Great resources. So today you're going to learn how to make fruit shrubs. And this one you may want to scan right now, because that's the QR code that's going to get you to the Master Food Preserver site and to the recipes. Okay. Now, here's some additional Master Food Preserver resources. We have So Easy to Preserve, which is a book that you can purchase. You can also get these recipes for free off the website. So that's a big bonus. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and hand it over to Shannon. And let's go. Okay. And here's Shannon McMath.
Hi there. Thanks, Toby. I think we're good in that spot there. All right, so today we're talking about shrubs, and I know we just went through some Master Gardener stuff, and you're probably thinking shrubs are growing in your garden, but really we're going to make a fruit shrub, which is a drink that has been around for thousands of years. So basically what a shrub is, it's equal parts of fruit. We're going to be using strawberries today. A sweetener, I've got white sugar here, but you can use different sweeteners, honeys and stuff like that, and a vinegar. And I have several vinegars here, and you can choose which one you like when you make it. So it's a 1-to-1-to-1. So it's an equal part of all these parts. And where the word shrub comes from is it's an Arabic word called shrub. This is what they believe. And it is now, gone through the ages, and we call it a shrub. It originated in Turkey. And the whole reason for a shrub is to help preserve some of your fruits and fruit juices for use later. Before refrigeration, they had to come up with as many ways as they could to extend that food time. And nowadays, you may have a bumper crop of some sort of fruit or berry that you pop in your freezer. Pop it in your freezer, you can make a shrub later, and that's kind of what we're doing here today. So the popularity of shrubs here in the United States started in colonial times in the 1700s. They called it a fruit vinegar at that point. They weren't using the term shrub. And then around the 1800s is when they started calling it a shrub again. I don't know why exactly that switched. Maybe someone, came over and said, no, we call it a shrub back home. So that's where that came from. And it got really popular here during Prohibition, because they no longer could have their cocktail parties and have everyone come over and consume these alcohol drinks. So they switched over to a shrub so they could still have a fancy little cocktail and still be within the law. So they didn't have to worry about that. And then in the 30s, when Prohibition was over, shrubs kind of fell out of fashion again. And now they're starting to make a comeback. We have a lot of people doing DIY stuff. There's people hoping to know what's healthy in their foods. And this can be a soda that you make that you know everything that's in it. That's not gonna, have chemicals or things that you don't know is there. Let's see. So different uses for it. I kind of mentioned it a little bit already. You can have non-alcoholic soft drinks because you can mix it with just some bubbly water or some regular water. You can have fancy pretty drinks for younger kids. Like if you're having a party and they want to have their fancy glass too, you can mix this up for them. And you can also mix it with alcohol and have some signature drinks. And that way people who are not consuming or who want to consume the alcohol can mix it with. My husband likes to mix some of the cherry ones with a vodka, and he enjoys that. So some of the tools and supplies that you would need are, of course, some fruit, and we've got strawberries today. And you need a sweetener. We're going to use just white sugar, but you can use honey, you can use brown sugar. You just have to keep in mind that whatever sweetener you use is going to impart a flavor into your shrub. So if you have a molasses in there, it's going to really overtake your fruit probably. So you have to kind of keep that in mind and maybe back off a little on some of the sweetener. Honey is considered way sweeter than the white sugar. So you have to keep that in mind too. It might end up super sweet and you might have to mix a little bit more of your water with it. The other thing you need, of course, is vinegar because we have that 1:1:1 ratio, and you need to put in the vinegar. And you can use just about any vinegar. I did try a white distilled vinegar with some apple, and that is not the right answer. Don't use the white vinegar. Avoid it if you can, but you can use red wine vinegar. You can use white wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar. We just tried, my husband just had me put rice vinegar into this cherry one, so we're going to see how that one tastes. I think by far everyone's favorite has been the champagne vinegar. It's pretty mild, but it is a little expensive, so you kind of have to decide how you want to do. Also, I've seen some recipes where it's not just fruit, they're using other vegetables in it. There's one that I saw that was a tomato basil, so it's a little bit more of a savory shrub. And you can mix herbs and spices in with these as well. There's different recipes for that. So I guess we will go ahead and do a little demo on how it works. So first we're going to take a nice clean jar and we're going to start with about a cup of fruit. So you want to make sure your fruit is washed really well, trim off any parts you don't like, and cut it into small chunks. And we're just going to drop these into the jar. And pretend I cut these all up. We're gonna just drop those in. So it's about a cup. I'm starting with about a cup, which means that we need about a cup of sugar to ratio. So I've got a cup measured out here. And I'm gonna pour it right into this jar and seal it up. And once you have it sealed, okay, they're telling me louder, so I'll try to talk a little louder. So once you have it sealed, you want to give it a good shake. You want all that fruit to be covered with the sugar because it's going to macerate down into a syrup. And then you just put that in your fridge for 1 to 3 days. And what I usually do is every time I open the fridge, I'll give it a little shake to make sure that that sugar is really, melting everything down and getting it juicy. So magic of television, we put that in the fridge for 1 to 3 days. This is what we end up with, a nice fruit syrup. Got a lot of sugar. We got a little bit of the berries still in there. And then we need to strain out the fruit. So I'm going to have Toby come over and give me a hand so I don't spill everywhere. So we've got a funnel. I'm going to have you hold the strainer there. All right. We're going to strain the fruit out.
Yum. I've got lots of strawberries in my freezer. I had bumper crop.
And this smells like almost like a strawberry candy. It's super sweet strawberry. All right, I think I got it now. And then once you do that, you want to go ahead and squish out as much juice as you can because you don't want any of that stuff wasted. Look at the color on that. Pretty good. I haven't done a strawberry one all the way yet. So, all right, so there we go. right, so now we have our juice. This is basically a fruit syrup, and we need to add vinegar to it. And again, it's the 1 cup. And I think I'm going to splurge and use my champagne vinegar in this one.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So it's 1 cup, even though this looks like you measure the things ahead of time.
Ahead of time,
before you-
correct.
Okay.
It's 1 to 1 to 1 to start with.
To start with.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, got half cup measure here, so let's get that in. Ooh, it smells vinegary now. Oh, there's the last one I showed you. All right, so we've got it all in there. We're gonna put a cap on it. And you can give it a little swirl, shake it up a little. And this, you can drink it now. You can let it sit in your fridge for a while and kind of meld together a little more. This will hold in your fridge, they say, for up to a year, but it's not very much. So you'll probably finish it before a year is up. And let's see what else I need to say. So we've got it all strained, we got it chilled, and now you have a shrub. So what do you do with it at this point? Some ideas would be you could bottle it up. We've got some cute little bottles here that we've poured our shrub in, and you could take it to a party as a hostess gift. You can make up several, have them at your own party and do a tasting. And because you can mix so many different varieties, it's kind of fun to figure out what people like best. Let's see.
And so Shannon, when I did this at home, I went through and took like a couple tablespoons, put it over ice, and then put sparkling water. So you don't just drink that straight.
Right.
Yeah.
You can, but it's really strong.
Really strong.
So I do have a glass here. We'll put some ice in it, and maybe Toby can taste it.
Ooh.
I think I've smelled too much vinegar. So
Okay, I'll volunteer.
All right. I have a taste of this combination. So we'll put in a little ice. Would you want some of the strawberry, or you want to try the cherry?
I think I want to try the strawberry. That
Okay.
looks really good.
All right, let's see.
And just saying, I did my first one that I did use red wine vinegar.
We're
It's
just
a
gonna-
little sharp, so.
Yeah, so we'll just pour in
Perfect.
so much. And I've got
Wow.
some bubbly water here. I'll put that in. That's probably good. You'll have to tell me if it's too much of one or the other. So.
Okay.
Is it good?
That's delicious. Very good.
Good.
I love it. Okay, well, I'm taking this with me. So.
Okay, it's all yours.
All right. Okay.
So that's pretty much it. That's how you make a shrub. And with the holidays coming, it's kind of a nice little treat that you can make up and just have some in your fridge for when people stop by.
Perfect. Thank you, Shannon. Well, and it's another great way to use up that extra fruit that you have. I just started a shrub with some pineapple guava that one of my master gardener friends has given me. And it was, it's not done yet, but it was delish. Okay, so we're going to take some questions. So Ellie or Dana, could you give me a question to start with?
Okay, Toby. Susie would like to know, is the process the same for fresh and frozen fruit?
Yes. Oh, sorry. That was okay. That was Shannon's question. So hold on 1 second here. All right. So I am trying to get back up my screen here. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So Shannon, back to you.
Yes, the process is the same for fresh or frozen. I did this one here was a peach one, and it was frozen peaches, and I put them in the jar frozen with the sugar frozen, and then put it in the fridge. It slowly defrosted. It took a little while longer, of course, for the sugar to macerate it down because it had to defrost, but it still worked just the same. This one was frozen cherries. Obviously, this was fresh strawberries, so same process. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention is when you get to this point where you put the sugar in, you can use a spoon and kind of mash up the fruit a little bit to get those juices started.
Okay, thank you. Now let's see. Now I can pull up the Q&A. All right, so Susie, yes, and try that, Susie, with a lot of different things. I like to keep it in the in the refrigerator for a little while. It sort of gets you a little carbonation almost. Okay, so let's see. Peg has a question. My heirloom tomatoes last summer did not produce more than 2 to 3 tomatoes per plant. How disappointing. What went wrong, or was this the case throughout Sonoma County? So Sue, could you answer that question?
Here I am. Okay. Yeah, that wasn't the case. I think it was a good year for tomatoes. I think that the first thing I would ask is sun exposure. Did you have enough sun exposure? And maybe did you water? This could be a case of water, although maybe too much water. How does the foliage look? That would be one question I'd want to say. If it's really full and green, then I might ask, about the water. Was there too much water? How about pollination? Even though tomatoes are self-pollinating, they still do better with insect pollination. Oh, goodness. What else am I missing? Exposure, amount of water. Usually we cut back the water when they blossom. I guess a main question, if our person can write in again, was how many blossoms did they have? Did they have a lot of blossoms? That might be a key to, and I don't know about variety. That might be something too that Electra might answer, or you, Toby.
I think all of those things are important, and I think it sort of depends on what was happening when you set them out. Were they set out too early? The blossoms, did the blossoms all drop off? I had, last year was not a great tomato year for me. And part of it was I didn't amend the beds enough, I think. Tomatoes take an awful lot out of the soil, and as do other things that I grow. So I think that the crop rotation is super duper important. I would try some different varieties though. Things do change, and I know trees grow up, and parts of your garden that used to have enough sun for tomatoes don't have enough sun anymore. So yeah, that would be my best guess. I would go with something that your neighbor grew well, that did well, or something that you've grown in the past, and definitely change the beds where you put those in.
Yeah, I'm going to say that, I'm going to put in that crowding again too, because even though the sun exposure could have been really good in the spot, if things were crowded, like I mentioned on my later maturing tomatoes, they didn't do well. And it was because they just did not have enough space. And so, I'm going to insert that one too, that I could maybe, a lesson I learned I could pass on.
Thank you, Sue. That's great. Let's see. So Stephanie Wrightson has a question. Can I make a shrub with pineapple guava? Are there any fruits not recommended for making shrubs?
Yeah, you can use any fruit you want and just give it a try. And you can mix fruits, like you were saying you wanted to use the pineapple and the guava. Something that I read was that maybe blueberries aren't a strong enough flavor. Like you're going to taste way more sugar than you're going to taste of blueberries, but I haven't tried it yet. But I could imagine maybe a mix of blueberries and blackberries could be tasty. Just as you're mixing, you can mix vinegars too. So you don't need to use all of one vinegar. You don't need to use all of one type of fruit. So Yes, you can.
Great. And pineapple guava is a fruit that is ready right now in Sonoma County. So Stephanie, I did try that, and it's not all the way finished yet. I'm letting it sit for a bit. But yeah,
I
combos.
misunderstood. I thought you
Yeah,
meant a
pineapple and a guava.
So,
But I was also thinking it might be good with a few strawberries too, strawberries and pineapple guava, because it would be delicious. Okay, let's see, Electra, what are the hours for shopping at the Community Seed Exchange?
Let's see, just so everybody knows, the Community Seed Exchange produces seed for the community at no cost. So when you come to the Community Seed Exchange, the seeds are free. We do like to ask for a donation if you're able to do that, because that would help us with our growing supplies and our paper products, envelopes and that sort of thing. Before COVID, we were open every last Saturday of the month from 9 to 12. With COVID, we have been shut down for the last, I don't know, year and a half. We are still growing seeds in the garden. I would recommend that you check the website, communityseedexchange.org, for any updates on when we will start to be open again.
Okay, thank you. And Electra, yeah, the cool thing about Community Seed Exchange is you can usually, what happens is you go in and you can hear a speaker for an hour like Electra.
Right.
And then you can go and look at the seeds. So if you can also, during the pandemic, you could get on their email list, and then they'd say, here are 8 seeds that would be great for planting right now. If you would like some, let us know. And then they got them all ready and put them in little bags for us to pick up. It was wonderful.
It was quite an effort, I must say, but it was very creative.
Very nice. Yeah, and it was great. And you get local things that you can try. So let's see. How about we have somebody else that said, I had 4 different varieties of heirloom, and I'm assuming tomatoes, not many blossoms, sun all day. The year before, her hybrids did great. Well, and you know what? Maybe for the area that you're in, maybe you want to grow hybrids. Heirlooms, need often, a lot of the heirlooms are mature a little bit later. So, it's possible. That's it. I wouldn't give up on the heirlooms. My favorites, of course, are heirlooms. And it's prepping that soil ahead. Right now, where my tomatoes were, I put down chicken manure and leaves and straw. And then I go through and plant fava beans in there too, just to add, extra back in.
Toby, can I add something back in?
Absolutely.
Regarding the tomatoes, if the tomato is blossoming when we have very, very high heat, in other words, days over 90, 95 degrees, the pollen will not stay viable. So that may also have an impact on the crop. So if the blossoms are getting ready to form fruit right when we have those very, very hot days and nights, the fruit will not produce.
That's true. And and Electra, the tomato flowers are perfect flowers, right? So they have what they need, but they just it needs to be mixed. So they need the bees or the wind or something to move the flowers, correct?
Or a toothbrush.
Or toothbrush, right? So I know my husband is a beekeeper, and on super hot days like that, the bees don't do a whole lot when it gets over a certain temperature. So that might be part of it. There's so many different things that it can be. Watching from the beginning is super important. Let's see, and I'm not saying people didn't. Okay, so Steve Selleck has a question, and he is a master food preserver as well. He says, for a pomegranate shrub, would you use the seeds or use the juice? And same sugar and vinegar ratios. What would you say? There you go, Shannon.
I think the seeds might make, put some bitterness in there. So I would probably use the juice. And you can always cut back on the vinegar to start with and, give it some taste to see how you feel feel about it. I think the ratio, you could go, like if you had the juice, you had a cup of juice, you could put a cup of sugar in still, and then, maybe test the vinegar out, see if it's the way you like it.
Excellent. And we want to make sure these aren't shelf stable, right? You're putting them in the refrigerator. So if you give people this cute little container, so you're going to put something on it that says refrigerate. So because lots of people think that just because they're in a jar that it is shelf stable, not always. Let's see, somebody else said magnesium increases flowering as far as the tomatoes. You want to be careful of adding anything too much into your soil unless you've had a soil test. Correct, Electra and Sue? Electra?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, people are advocating for adding magnesium to their soil to increase flowering. So I said, you might want to soil test first, or, and you watch how many different things you add into your soil.
Mm-hmm. I have never added magnesium, so I cannot answer that question. Maybe Sue can.
Okay, I just am such a proponent of compost, and I know all of you are too, and kind of compost balances the soil from what I observe. Like Electra, I've not added magnesium. I think if there is a magnesium or a phosphorus deficiency in the soil, then maybe that can be, confronted. However, I hate to say, because we have someone on the chat that says she added magnesium, grows roses, and I've heard alfalfa, and, which tells me that different things may contribute. However, the levels, I think, in the soil are minute in comparison to, what somebody might add. It might be too much. I would be afraid, say, if I even did a soil test and I saw that my soil was low in a particular mineral, it's usually balanced out by something else. And I would, I would be afraid to add that unless I was well acquainted with the plant and perhaps the person that added that is. So I'm going to stand with compost as a additive to your soil, and leave it at that. I just, like Electra, I don't have a lot of experience with adding magnesium. I don't have any, actually.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, for the most part, we advocate compost, and I know that, or get a soil test. We had a request for the Master Food Preservers QR code, and there it is. Okay. Let's see, here's some of the food preservation resources again. And
do you want to mention
yeah. Okay. And this, the documents that you will get from the Master Food Preserver site. Now you do have to look there underneath one of the tabs. There's one that looks like this, and a Schwitzel is sort of like a shrub, but it uses molasses. And this is a multi-page document that will tell you everything you need to know. And plus there's another one from the Ball canning book, which it is an approved recipe. It's not really a preserving recipe, so a way to use up your fruit. Yummy, yummy. There you go. Here's the Master Gardener web pages. And if you want the garden information, there you go. There's a QR code for that. And I believe that we answered your questions. Any that I missed, Ellie and Dana?
No.
Okay, great. Well, we'll miss you in December, but we'll be back in January. And if you have anything that you just would love us to talk about, then please put that in the Q&A before you sign off. And thanks a lot for joining us.